May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Larry Shainberg. Lawrence Shainberg to you. And Larry is the author of the wonderful Ambivalent Zen, and some other books that we will talk about in here. And the recent For Men Shaking, Searching for Sanity with Samuel Beckett, Norman Mailer, and My Perfect Zen Teacher, which Shambhala brought out. It is an account of his experience in his life with three men. He's the fourth: Norman Mailer, Samuel Beckett, and his teacher Kudo. And I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I say that here, so I'm just repeating myself. Anyway, and he's written a lot of articles and stuff, and he's been a serious Zen practitioner. You can check him out at LawrenceShainberg.com. That's LawrenceShainberg.com. We did a whole talk that was recorded for a podcast. And then when I looked at it, his track was empty. So, but he was very good-natured about it. He didn't care. Well, let's talk again. So I said, well, I'm going to read this book of yours, For Men Shaking first. And I'm a slow reader, and I just read it out loud to Katrinka while she made dinner. It's not a long book, but there were also other things happening, and we had a house guest, and so eventually I got through it and called him back. And, you know, it was really like, it wasn't quite like talking for the first time, because we knew each other now from more than a few emails and me having read his book. And, you know, I couldn't remember anything we'd said before, and I don't think he could. So it was fine. It was great. No problem. I did remember a few things from it, actually, that I brought up. So anyway, it's really enjoyable talking to him. And I look forward to maybe talking to him more in the future about other things, maybe getting him to read some of the stuff he's written outside of his books. But we'll see, because I've got a lot in mind to do. And right now I'm only doing one podcast a week while I'm on this so-called writing retreat that I've already explained before. You know, I'm trying to finish Tassara stories, put it together, and get it out the door so I can forget about it. Okay, so look, let's just give Larry a call and see what he has to say. So look, after we've had our pause to meditate, that is. So when you hear the bell, hit pause if you're of such a mind, and we'll meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you're through, hit unpause, and we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and then we'll let Larry Shainberg take it over.
Hi, David.
Hi there. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
We are finally back together again.
Yeah. It's been terrible separation anxiety.
So I wanted to wait till I finished reading your latest book, For Men Shaking, Searching for Sanity with Samuel Beckett, Norman Mailer, and My Perfect Zen Teacher. And one thing that people don't realize when they want me to read something is I read very slowly. And except when I'm on my computer working, I read all the time for work and stuff like that, constantly. I just read to my wife while she makes dinner. So it took a little time. But we loved it. It was really good.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's about you and your Zen teacher, Kyudo. Is it Nakagawa?
Yeah, Kyudo Nakagawa.
Right. I only saw that once, his family name. And Norman Mailer and Samuel Beckett. And that was great. It's unique. Would you like to say anything about that book? I mean, I can say things about it. I dug it. I thought, well, anyway, you should say something.
Well, I don't know. I think it's just a story. In retrospect, looking at it, just a story of amazing good luck of my life. It's just like winning the lottery 3 times with those guys. And how I got to know Beckett was a miracle of great luck, as was Mailer, but Beckett was even more, And the parallel, the way both of them were so involved with, asking me questions about Zen all the time. And as you saw with Mailer, he was more argumentative about it. But I made a mistake with Mailer because I let him kind of trap me into arguing about Buddhism. But, and if I had insisted on talking about sitting practice, he would, it would have shut him up, because obviously the person he'd been writing for 35 years, he knew a lot about sitting meditation, but all he wanted to argue about was Buddhism.
Yeah.
And he was very seductive in the way he could take over conversations. And it was too much. It was so much fun to argue with him that I would lose the point. He was when I knew Mailer, it was the priority in his life was friendship.
Yeah.
He wasn't self-conscious about it, but he was just a person who was devoted to his friends. And he was amazingly generous. Of course, Beckett was the same way. They were as different as any two people could be.
Yeah.
But they had that in common.
Yeah.
They were both extremely generous, and particularly generous to younger writers.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And that's very interesting. You're the younger writer, and now I'm
80. I'm just on my way to 87. I'm older than either of them were.
87. Right.
Yeah. They both died at 85.
Hmm.
So they were. So I mean, I feel a little bit. I feel like I want to keep quiet about that for now. Yeah.
How old was Kudo when he died?
He was 80.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Well,
And
Mailer seems to me liked to ruffle people's feathers, and Beckett was very thoughtful and didn't want to hurt people's feelings. Is that right?
yes, it is. Although Naylor, at that point, he had been that way famously most of his life. But as he was aging, I mean, during the time I knew him, which was the last 10 years of his life, he didn't have that. He wasn't arguing. He didn't ruffle feathers like that. He loved to argue,
Mm-hmm.
but he was very polite about it. And as I said, he was very seductive because it was so much fun to be arguing with him.
Mm. And he wrote so many books. Oh my God. How many?
Yeah, he never stopped. He never stopped.
It was like
Um,
30 books or 27 or something, or 36.
I think it was around 30,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure. There's a wonderful biography of him by a guy named Mike Lennon, who was, a very close friend of his. It's really worth reading because, I mean, Mailer was an American phenomenon. He was so much emblematic of that period in American history, and he was such a dominant character.
Mm.
It's really worth reading that book.
What did he argue with Gore Vidal about?
Oh, that was early. That was way before I knew him. There was something about it was on the Dick Cavett show. It was a famous moment where I think Vidal had said something about him in print and a bad review of him. I'm getting a lot of interference now.
Oh, I think you were just hearing me. I'm sitting in a rattan chair. I think you were hearing. I just put my legs up. I sit with my legs crossed, and it makes it like rattling.
That's some noisy legs you got. You had some very noisy legs. But anyway, Mailer famously headbutted Vidal on that not on the show, not live, but on the in the waiting room of it. By the time I knew Mailer, he and Vidal were friends again, and Vidal actually came to visit him up here in Provincetown. So the original argument was just about Vidal dismissing his work in print.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it. But he was much less argumentative by the time I knew him. He had mellowed a lot, and he had, and he was having a lot of trouble with his legs. He couldn't. It was hard for him to move around. Amazingly stoical about it, but he was obviously a very weakened person.
I remember you saying Mailer had to walk with 2 canes.
Yeah, he did. He had serious problems, and he was way overweight. So he managed. He managed to get around, and was living alone up here at the Cape those last couple of years of his life.
Not taking care of one's body well enough is a problem a lot of intellectuals have. You, however, go swimming.
Yeah, I'm pretty fanatical swimmer.
Yeah, tell us where you go swimming.
Well, up here on the Cape, there are a bunch of freshwater ponds. They're called kettle ponds, and they're glacial. They're glacially originating, and they are fresh water. They feed into the ocean, but the water is it's just magnificent water for swimming, and it's a very, I don't know. I mean, they're just very lucky to be able to do it. Most people like me, we have our own ponds where we're particular one or another. Where I'm addicted to one, but there are maybe 40 of them up here, and it's an ideal swimming environment.
Yeah, and what you're by the Cape, is that Massachusetts?
Yeah, it's Provincetown is the easternmost point of the United States.
Oh, is that right?
And,
is that
yeah.
right? Not Maine.
Yeah. Actually, the easternmost point is the Provincetown tip. That's where the Pilgrims landed. And I live in Truro, which is the next town over from Provincetown. It's just about it's about a 15-minute drive to Provincetown from here. But there are many. It's a kind of a swimmer's paradise because there's two different bodies of salt water. You can swim in the ocean, you can swim in the bay, or you can swim in these freshwater ponds, which everybody's got their preference.
And what's the temperature?
Right, it's just like last week. It just got to the wetsuit temperature. It's too cold to swim without a wetsuit. But and I was swimming in it in May, so that it's a pretty good season. A long time you can swim here.
Do you swim with a wetsuit?
I have a phobia about them because the one time I just got it. I have a hard time with them. I feel claustrophobic in it.
Yeah.
So by the time that when the weather gets this cold, I start doing long walks or I look for a gym to swim. And there is an indoor pool here too. So
how much chlorine does the indoor pool have?
Well, it's chlorinated, but kind of typically, but I don't. It's hard to go indoors when you've been swimming in these ponds,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But so it's really walking weather now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the walks are. It's gorgeous. It's really just amazingly beautiful here. Almost as beautiful as where you are, I guess.
No. It's probably more beautiful.
Yeah.
It's not more beautiful here than other places, really. It's just a lot of hype.
It is. Is that right?
It's your path is really interesting because not only were you very fortunate to run into your teacher and to run into these two great writers that you had really in-depth relationships with, but you had parents who were spiritual seekers or whatever. And I remember from your book, it's not accidental. It's
Ambivalent.
Ambivalent Buddhist.
Ambivalent Zen.
Ambivalent Zen, right. I know it. I forget every name these days. Oh, I'm sure you understand that.
I sure do.
um, tell me about what it was like growing up with your parents, because I remember you didn't appreciate it at the time as much as you did later.
Well, I didn't because, but I was just an incredibly lucky guy, and my whole life has been a string of good luck, like that's inexplicable. Uh, I'm trying to, I'm writing about that now, just writing about the astonishing good luck that I had. One of them was, taking it in reverse, meeting Beckett and Mailer, of course, and meeting my teacher. But before that, I knew Soen Roshi, and I
Yeah.
knew, but of all the things, my father was the least likely type of person to get involved with Eastern philosophy. But he was uh, the president of the local synagogue in Memphis, and then a Hebrew school teacher. They hired a Hebrew school teacher down there who was a scholar, and
Hmm.
he introduced him. First, he introduced him to Spinoza, and from Spinoza, my father didn't even graduate high school, and he started to read avidly, and then he got very involved eventually in psychoanalysis, and then he got involved with Krishnamurti and Alan Watts, and that was how my path was sort of set up for me. But it was just, phenomenal luck all around.
Mm.
Phenomenal.
Mm. And you met
Yeah.
Krishnamurti, I remember.
Oh yes, I did. My brother knew him quite well.
Oh,
But there are a series of videotapes. There are videos on YouTube with my brother, who was a psychoanalyst, and
oh,
the physicist David Bohm. You know
yeah,
who he was?
yeah.
He was also a great student of Krishnamurti, and he was a friend of my brother's. So
Oh,
there were these three-way conversations. There's a whole series of them on YouTube.
oh,
But and my brother, he brought Krishnamurti to New York, where he addressed a group of psychoanalysts,
mm-hmm.
and that was how I got to know Krishnamurti a little bit. But in a way, I kind of argued with him because he was opposed. By that time, I was already studying Zen, and Krishnamurti was opposed to any kind of formal practice.
Uh-huh.
And he was kind of dogmatic, I thought about it. I mean, he was a very charismatic figure, but he was very dogmatic about that subject. And so, but he and my brother there, they were good friends.
Mm. Mm.
So, considering this is a family from Memphis, two sons of a businessman in Memphis, and that we still found our way along these paths. It's
Mm.
kind of amazing and lucky.
Yeah, yeah. So, you said you were already into Zen or studying it when you met Krishnamurti. But, I usually ask people when did they first get an inkling that about spiritual practice. But you, and my past is sort of like yours. You had it at home when you were growing up.
Well, not really. Not really. I mean, my father introduced me to. He was involved with it intellectually, and I wrote about this in Ambivalent Zen. He even brought Alan Watts. He sponsored Alan Watts a talk he gave in Memphis, and Watts came and stayed in our house. So I did know him, but I didn't know anything about sitting meditation until I got to in college. There was somebody I met who introduced me to it, but because the other was strictly intellectual, you know.
Yeah, but it's like the first door.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
was yes, I was, but you know, it was Oedipal thing. I think that almost, you know, I was not sympathetic to anything my father was going to introduce me to, and and you know, and then I was in college. My first wife, who was a Sarah Lawrence student, she was much more spiritually inclined, but she had a friend, a woman who had been living in Taiwan and was studied with a woman Zen master. I don't know who it was. And she was the one that I said, well, what do you do in Zen? I didn't know anything about Zazen. And she was the one that introduced me to it. So, and I was kind of, I don't know, cynical about it. But then the next day after she had introduced me to it, I went down, you know, I went to my office and I did it. I started sitting and I've never stopped.
And how old were you?
At that time, I was 30.
And where were you living?
In New York.
And what was your office about?
What was my office? I was writing. I was writing a book, writing my first novel, and you know, and I came down. She just showed me how you sit down on a cushion and look at the wall, and I did it. And you know about that. I mean, once I did it, I never stopped.
That's great.
I never, yeah.
That's great.
I've never, yeah.
Well, I'm curious about this. You had an office for writing. You're working on a novel. How are you paying the bills?
Well, that's one of the places that I've been lucky. I didn't have to worry about it. You know, my father had, you know, I had inherited some money.
Yeah.
So when I got out of college, I was able to write. I was able to start writing.
That's good. And it's really good you knew what to do with yourself.
Well, that's stretching it some. I don't think I knew what to do. I mean, I knew I was compulsively writing, but I didn't know anything, you know.
That's
really
okay.
Didn't.
That's okay. You had a purpose. Having enough money where you don't have to work and being sort of, you know, not knowing what to do with yourself is a problem.
Well, it did. It is problematic. Yeah. And I didn't have that external pressure. I did some journalism for money, but I mean, I did have the money to be able to do that. And, you know, that's a mixed blessing because it can leave you exposed to a lot of depression.
Right.
And so it certainly did me. But anyway, like I said, my life was like a series of lotteries that I won.
Yeah. And what was your first book?
It was a novel about basketball, or one-on-one. And yeah, I had been pretty much addicted to basketball from the time I was very young, and aspired to be a player, but I was never much better than I was mediocre. But then I got out, you know, but you know, I was just lucky enough to have that subject,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my. And then I did journalism after that for the Times magazine about basketball, about the New York Knicks, and so.
Hmm.
But yeah, basketball was important to me.
Hmm. Hmm. So you were sort of a sports writer.
I was, yes, I was. I had done, I guess, my first newspaper articles were about a couple of boxing articles, and then I did I did this book called One on One, and at that time I was again. This was the year the New York Knicks won the last time they won the championship, and the Times was looking for somebody to travel with them, and that's how, and I got, and they were directed to me by another guy, so I got that job and I traveled with them, and I, that was pretty, that was a kind of like for a sports writer at that point, that was like winning the lottery too,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sort of interested in both your paths here, your Zen path and your writing path. And what year did 101 come out?
Let's see, 50. I think it was about 1968.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't.
yeah, yeah, and so you were in your early 30s or something, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you were already sitting, but had you met any teachers or anything at that point?
Well, my first place, I went to the New York Zendo, and I met, and I did know I met Ado Roshi there,
Yeah.
and then, and of course, as you probably know, the New York Zendo and Daibosatsu with Ado Roshi, that was pretty much of a Rinzai place.
Oh, yeah.
It was very uptight and very intimidating,
Yeah.
with 90-minute sittings, and it was pretty extreme.
You mean periods that are 90 minutes long?
Yes, I do. The 90 minutes.
That's unusual.
I know it. Well, that was Ado. That was his style, and it intimidated a lot of people, including me.
Wow.
Now with Shinge Roshi, when she took over, the place is completely different.
I don't know.
Well, do you know Shinge Roshi?
No.
She's the abbot there now.
Did she immediately follow Edo?
Yeah. She was a long-time student of his, and she was the Dharma ear. Well, Ado was scandalized, and even in the last years of his life, he was forbidden even to come onto to Daibosatsu, because he got into all this trouble with women.
Oh yeah, that's very famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's people don't realize that there's more to him than that, because of how that just eats up all the press.
That's right. He was in his way, he was a truly amazing teacher. There are people, a couple of people from the monastery tried to talk me into doing a biography of him, but I didn't feel that, I was thinking about it when he was alive, but I didn't act fast enough, and I didn't really feel that I was the guy to do it.
Better not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you had a good subject with Kudo.
Oh yeah, and they were both of them Ryutakuji monks.
Yeah, that's right.
And but they never had anything to, and they were both in New York. Edo was uptown, of course, and Kudo was in Soho, but they never saw each other, as far as I know.
That's so typical of Japanese,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although there was one time that they met at the Soho Zendo. I have a photograph of the two of them with Soen Roshi there.
Yeah.
But they didn't have anything to do with each other.
Yeah, but it's typical in one way, in that that they tend to stick with what they're doing, not dabble in other things, not do a lot of ecumenical stuff. They just want to do what they're doing, and but usually they're friendly with their own. Their own Dharma brothers.
Yeah. Well, I think Kudo knew. He knew about Edo. His shenanigans with women.
Yeah.
And he really did not like that at all.
Yeah.
And Kudo was one teacher who was completely pure in that way.
Yeah.
He never had anything to do with, Soen Roshi too was like that. I think Soen Roshi may have been celibate his whole life. And Kudo did get involved with one Japanese woman who was a student at our Zendo.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that they had sex, but if they did, that would have been his first time.
Well, I wouldn't want to deprive him of that.
I know. I had no judgment at all.
Yeah.
But he was a unique character. He was like nobody else.
I can definitely see him not approving of Edo.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
But he was also the kind of person who would not be overtly. He wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He never said anything to us about Edo, but he just didn't have anything to do with him.
Yeah, well, I think not only the knowing about his shenanigans, but Edo's personality. I mean, Edo told me, he said, I'm a very arrogant person. It's just the way I am. And
oh, really?
Yeah. he said Suzuki Roshi was my secret teacher. He said I was just amazed that somebody could be that humble, because I can't.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Well, Edo, I got to know Edo when Daibosatsu was opening. Mm-hmm. I did an article on the opening for the New York Times Magazine. Mm. So and Edo showed me around. He showed me every part of the monastery. He was very proud of it. He gave me a lot of Zen instruction in the process. Mm. He was very, very, very patient and kind with me. Mm. And we actually I got to be friends with him, mm. He was, at that point, I had been at Daibosatsu, where I had been there a couple of times, and I'd been scared off by those long sittings. So I didn't come back. But when I did go to one weekend session at the New York Zendo, mm-hmm. and as I was coming in on a Friday night, that Ado was coming down the stairs, and he saw me, and he looked at me. He said, "At last."
Ah.
So, yeah.
Ah.
Anyway, he was, yeah.
You
But
in Four Men Shaking, you tell about something you heard him say in a talk that really impressed you. Do you remember what that
yeah,
was?
he was talking about the first of the four vows. We vow to save all sentient beings,
Yeah.
and he said that sounds very, grandiose, to save all sentient beings. But what does it mean when Zen practice? What do we mean when we say to save a sentient being? It means to accept them as they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was very, very profound as to me. I think to any, it was a kind of a
Yeah.
it's never stopped being important to me.
Yeah. That's what the word love, the way it's used in the Bible, well, in the New Testament, love thy neighbor and everything. That's what it means. It means to accept them, to respect them. It doesn't mean to have some emotional feeling toward them.
Yes, well, but this was beautiful. That's beautiful in itself. But this was a revelation to me.
Yeah.
But can I tell you an amazing story?
I'm here for you.
I was, after Kyudo Roshi died, I didn't have a teacher for a while, for a good while. I've forgotten how long, but I had one night I had a dream. I don't remember the dream, but I remember telling my wife about it at breakfast that the next morning. And my wife was a Tibetan Buddhist student.
Mm.
And she listened. She said to me, after I told her about this dream, I wish I could remember the dream, but anyway, she said, it sounds to me like you're ready for a teacher again.
Mm.
And my immediate thought was Ado. That I would, if I was going to have another Zen teacher, it would be Ado. And I was going to ask Ado if I could study with him. And I knew Ado's one of his Jisha, and I was going to call him that evening to ask him if he would get me an appointment with Ado. That afternoon, I found out that Ado had died the night before, the night I had the dream.
Wow, well, he died in Japan.
Yeah.
Was he even planning to come back to America?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
His wife was back here. He had that apartment.
And
yeah.
Was he still teaching?
He was, but they would not allow him to go to Daibosatsu or to the New York Zendo. The board of trustees, the board of directors because there had been all these lawsuits threatened about him.
Yeah.
So he was kind of persona non grata, but they had an independent group called the Rinzai Zen group. I forgot. And they had independent sittings and even all 1 day sittings at different places, but not at the Zendo.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so I really was going to try to study with him, and he had died the night I had that dream.
Wow, that's really interesting,
isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he certainly is the most extreme case of being sexual predator or whatever. I mean, he was just out of control, and he did a lot of
Yeah, he
really
was.
unethical things. It cannot be compared. Other teachers I've seen get a bad reputation for rather minor, uh, sexual, or romantic, um, uh, escapades, or whatever.
Yeah,
But he's like the Harvey Weinstein of Zen in America.
he really was. He just he could not stop himself.
No,
You
he
know.
couldn't. He,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, anyway, very interesting. Very interesting. Um, so, remind me. So, in terms of your Zen path, you first sat at Zen studies, and
Yes.
then what?
I studied, and then I was at ZCNY. I studied with Glassman.
CCNY.
Zen Community of New York.
Oh,
ZCNY.
ZCNY. Oh, yeah. Oh, with Bernie
You know,
Glassman. Oh,
yeah.
let's hear about that. He was a trip.
Oh, he was. Yeah, He was also important, very important to me. But and then after I met Kudo, that's when I left Glassman. But I had become impatient with Glassman. I mean, he was too distracted. The whole situation there became very distracting. But
You got any details there?
well, Glassman was the kind of person who, he was like an entrepreneur, and as soon as he got wonderful ideas, and as soon as something started to work, he would be looking somewhere else, and he justified that a lot, and I've written about that in Ambivalent Zen too, but he would just justify that it was keeping, as Zen students, we needed to be off balance, and he would move us around a lot. He moved things around at ZCNY a lot. He was a brilliant teacher.
Yeah.
But he was very, very impatient and restless in his mind.
Yeah. Were you involved with his bakery?
They were just starting to go. Well, it was starting up when I was there, and I knew the guys who were the first bakers, and there were these big arguments. We had arguments because he would insist on putting, during sesshin, he would leave the sweets around he felt they would be sitting out for us to eat, even we could pick them up while we were doing kinhin. And so a lot of us got very upset about that. We thought, but he said, it's good for you to have the discipline. But, you're in sesshin and you can go and grab a donut. You're going to grab it. And anyway, that was already part of Glassman's, the restlessness about him. And as soon as I met, I had promised myself, I had heard about Kudo, that there was this crazy monk who was living in Israel,
Oh, yeah.
And I was working on the book on neurosurgery called Brain Surgeon. And I promised myself that when I finished that book, I was going to go and meet him. I had lived in Israel myself when I was younger.
Oh.
But, I lived on a kibbutz.
Oh, wonderful.
But I had promised myself that I was going to go and meet Kudo after I finished my book. And that's what I did. And I met him in Jerusalem. And then about, 3 months after I left Jerusalem, he showed up in New York. So that's part of the lotteries that I'm talking about that I won,
Yeah. How did you know he showed up in New York?
Well, he was brought to New York by a woman named Pearl Epstein. Does that name mean anything to you?
No,
Uh,
but
she
I might have
she
at one point. I just forget.
well,
You know.
she lived in Soho, which was I lived near Soho, and she was actually the woman I told you, my first wife. She was
Oh,
a friend of hers,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so this woman had spent a lot more time in Israel than I did, and had gotten to know him there, and she kind of sponsored him coming to New York. So there was a connection between us because of my wife knowing her and everything. So, but then I had just met him in Israel twice. I had been to sit at his zendo up in Jerusalem. And when he came to New York, he acted as if we had known each other for 20 years. So anyway, it was just, and he set up the new zendo, the Soho Zendo. It was like a 15-minute walk from my apartment in New York. So I was involved with it from the first day until the last.
Is that right? My.
Yeah.
And what was the schedule of his sitting?
Well, it was a very easy schedule. I mean, he in terms you just we sat for 5 nights a week. On the one night he gave a Dharma talk. He didn't believe in sittings longer than 30 minutes.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And he was, and we had sessions once a month. We had sessions, and we, there we would go into the loft in New York. We'd stay for a week, but we didn't have any sittings in the summer. He was incredibly funny, riotous in his shows.
You said you didn't have any sittings in the summer. You mean session?
Yeah, we didn't have any. He sort of closed the Zendo. Well, of course, in the early days, he went back to Japan.
In the summer?
In the summer.
Wow.
Yeah. But
I mean, that's if I'd want to go back to Japan in the spring or the fall.
Well, he was very cognizant of our schedule.
Yeah.
Of when people were going to be there. So, and he went. He didn't go regularly to Japan, but he loved to hang around New York. He loved to walk the streets in New York.
What would he wear
when he became the abbot? When they Ryutakaji, he said to me as the day before he left, he said, "Now I pay for my laziness."
When he walked the streets of New York, what would he wear?
Well, he was, he just liked to disappear he looked like an American. He had a LL Bean jacket. He had a Yankee cap that he wore. And he never walked around in his robes or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
As Ado did, by the way.
Yeah.
No, Kudo wanted to disappear, wanted to be an American. He didn't care. Anyway, he was the most eccentric person that you could ever imagine meeting, Kudo.
I get that impression from Ambivalent Zen and from Four Men Shaking, and I really like that about Four Men Shaking is that there was so much good material on Kudo because he's not very well known. He's only known through you.
That's right. It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a real shame. We have all of his shows. We have them recorded and everything, and we've thought of doing something with them, but our Zendo sort of, dispersed it, and the whole thing. We lost the focus of doing that. But
where are the tapes?
We have they're on they're on cassettes.
Good Lord. Let's talk about that later. You should, I can suggest what could be done with them.
Well, we've thought about it a lot, and there are people who have involved or have already volunteered, me being one of them, to transcribe them.
Well, you should digitize them first.
We've got them digitized.
You've got them digitized. You haven't backed up well.
Yeah.
You haven't backed up.
Yeah. So we've sort of lost the momentum to do it. We were determined to do something with them, but we just lost the momentum,
How many tapes how many, it's not tape anymore, how many lectures do you have?
I don't know, to tell you the truth, but I would bet at least 30.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Oh.
But this is a wild guess, David. I really don't know. I'd have to look. It's been I've got them on my phone here,
My goodness.
And I used to listen to them. I'd go whenever I still can listen to them when I'm walking here on the Cape, or when I go to the gym, when I'd be on a treadmill, I'd listen to his K shows.
Well, I'll put them all online if you want.
Well, let me look into this to the technology myself.
Yeah.
And back it up. But I could, I don't know how other people would feel about that, but or how I would love for them to be there.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
I'd like people to know who he was.
Yeah. Just, it seems to me it would be rather simple for them to be available. And they should be transcribed too. I mean, it's just 30, good Lord. Or whatever. It's, some people, we have hundreds and hundreds, and it's, but anyway, we can deal with that on email. That's interesting.
Yeah, let's think about that. That's a good idea. I love the idea.
And you should include who's in charge.
Well, that's the point. That was the problem. That the Zendo just sort of dispersed. It sort of fell apart. We don't talk. We've all lost touch with each other.
Well,
so
is there any? Are there any people you'd want to get approval from, so it's sort of like a consensus decision?
I'd have to do that.
Yeah.
I certainly could. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people that we would have to get in touch with.
Yeah.
There was the main person, where it was a Japanese woman, and I don't know what happened to her. She was living in New York, studying painting, but I think she went back to Japan.
Hey,
I don't know. We've all lost touch with each other.
Yeah. Tell what, what I remember about her is she never talked about herself. You didn't know anything about her. And you were in the car with Kudo. You just picked him up at the airport. Do you remember? You know what I'm talking
Of
about?
course I remember.
Yeah,
Of course
tell
I
that.
remember. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we didn't have that much of a connection with each other, but we were stuck in traffic coming back from picking him up at the airport, and she and I were in the back seat. Then a guy had picked him up in his SUV. Kudo was in the front seat, and she started telling me about her life. It was the first time she had ever really talked to me about anything personal. And after she was talking and telling me about how she came to New York and everything, and then suddenly Kudo turned around and fired off a lot of just a volley of angry Japanese at her. And I said, what's wrong? I said, is he angry at you? And she said, yes, he's very angry. And she said, I said, why? And he said, I'm losing all my energy to memory.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And that was him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So she's the one that would have to get, we'd have to get her approval on anything we do, I think. But I know people who could probably find her.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right.
it's an amazing story, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I feel that way. I feel like I'm sort of an archivist, and we have this giant archive of not just Suzuki and Zen Center, but just the whole milieu and everything. But I see it like writing on a leaf and throwing it in a creek and watching it go down. Nothing's going to last, and I see it as a way to say hello, that we're just saying hello to each other. Also, I like it to be free. I don't like to charge.
What do you mean to be free?
I don't like for people to have to pay to access any of this. It's a problem for Zen groups in America and Japan. They have this whole support system that is developed over the millennia, right? And in America, you start some Zen center, it doesn't have that. They've got to figure out how to pay for things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that was one thing about Kudo, is that he certainly didn't have any kind of ambition in that regard, to have another, and, we had a loft, and that was all he wanted. He didn't want any expansion,
Yeah.
He didn't have that mentality.
Yeah. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah.
And Ryu Takachi is very near Rinso-in, Shunryu Suzuki's temple. And I've been there and around there so many times, and I never went to Ryu Takachi. And I had met Soen and Edo and spent some time with them. And I know people who've lived there. And I think Suzuki, when he was young, his teacher sent him there to study with Genpo, the very famous teacher. So
sure, I know.
I can't. I'm not sure about that, but Suzuki talked about his teacher sending him somewhere, and there was an old guy in Yaizu who said that he'd studied with Genpo, but Suzuki said he was very young and naive and didn't know what was happening. It wasn't. Anyway.
How come you never went there, though?
Ryu Takachi?
Yeah.
I should have. Because I'd be staying at Rinso-in, and doing stuff with the Suzuki family. And I wasn't really hanging out. I would either be there interviewing people, or I would be there for a couple of days, or, I'd go help Hoitsu with something. But when I lived in Japan, I lived way over on Okayama, which is, between Osaka and Hiroshima. It's a good distance away. So anyway, I just never did it. Next time.
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty interesting place.
Yeah.
It's very, very intense with the amazing energy in the sashins.
Yeah.
But I didn't go there. I only went there after Kyudo became abbot. I didn't go back after he died. I think some of the guys from our Zendo did go back after he died.
You went there while he was abbot?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, it was natural that once he left the New York, and he's just located in Japan. It was natural that it was a natural way to go and do sesshin with him again, and it was hard. It was a hard, because you'd be dealing with the jet lag at the same time you were dealing with whatever was going on in sesshin.
Yeah,
and it was. I had a hard time with those sessions. They were difficult. And then I went back. One time I went back and lived there for a month while he was abbot, and that was a wonderful time. There were only 7 months there at that time, and so they needed all the help they could get. Anyway, it was a wonderful time because I had a lot of access to Kyudo at that time, as much as I wanted.
What year did he die?
Oh, God. Hard to put it together.
Was it in the 80s or the 90s?
I think it was in the 90s, the early 90s.
Well, that means he was there when I was living in Japan. So that gives me something else to regret.
Yeah. Well, you can't have too much of that, David.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm pretty sure it was that he was there in the 90s. Yeah. It was, but he spoiled me when I came. He would make sure that I had the best room in the monastery.
So at this point, Larry asked me something. We got sidetracked talking about Bali and other things that, I've repeated so much in other podcasts. I thought, I'll cut that out. Then started talking about walking around, how I walk a lot here and this and that. And then we went into, it's good for me to walk. I not only like to walk, I need to walk.
Well, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. More and more. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I talked to Helen Twartalk today. She sends her regards to you.
Oh, I love her. She's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met her back when she was working on the book on American Zen teachers.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Zen in America?
I think so. Zen in America. I think so.
Yeah. I'll make sure I can't have the wrong title. I think that's it.
I think it's that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Yeah, she was trying to get people to talk about Richard Baker. And next time I saw her years later, I apologized. Oh, I wasn't very helpful. She said, you were more helpful than anybody else. She was too soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, incidentally, he and I are close. I'm in touch with him a lot.
I had some wonderful evening with him one time when he was coming through New York, and we had dinner together, but I've not seen him since then.
Is that right?
Yeah. If you get a chance, you could please say hello for me, will you?
Oh, I'll do it today. Yeah.
Yeah. He had dinner. We had dinner together. At one time, he had dinner with me and with Shinge Roshi. He wanted to see her, and we went after session. But so I've seen him twice. I know him from Crestone.
Oh, what do you mean? You've been to Crestone?
I sure have, because remember I told you about my wife being a Tibetan student.
Yeah.
She's a student of Zigar Khantrao Rinpoche, who has his place out there. And so I went to Crestone, and then I went up to the Zendo naturally to sit up there. And, who was his successor there? Who he had
There's different ones. It depends on what. There's Christian.
Well, Christian, I know, and I knew the other guy, but I can't remember.
Dan Welsh.
Yeah, Dan. Yeah, I knew Dan.
Yeah.
So, where do you have any connection to Dan now?
Oh yeah, I just had email with him this week. Although Dan left, he had a falling out.
I know he did.
But he's fine. Richard's fine. Those things happen. That's normal in communities and groups. Christian really needed to be more free, and he's running the Boulder,
he's up in Boulder
house.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, I know I knew all those guys, but where is Dan now?
He's in Santa Fe.
Oh, is he have a Zendo?
No.
Well, please tell him hello for me too, if you can't get a chance.
Yeah.
But
Dan's thriving. He's got a mate, and he's got many good friends there. He's lived a lot there, and he's well known for his pizzas.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He makes really great gourmet pizzas. In fact, we traded pizza pictures recently because my wife makes the most incredible pizzas. She uses pita bread for the crust, and then leftovers. They're not like pizzas you get at Domino's or anything. Pita bread, leftovers, and cheese. Sometimes she uses vegan cheese, or she'll use feta, or she'll use mozzarella, or she'll use sharp cheddar. We can get anything here pretty much.
Well,
because there's so many expats, But anyway, Dan's pizzas. So maybe I should put them online. He sent me a bunch of pictures.
Does Dan have any sitting group he sits with, or
no?
He doesn't practice.
He's no, I wouldn't say he doesn't practice. He's just not a. He's a Ronin.
Yeah.
He's. I think he's comfortable with his friends and everything, and his own personal practice. But I haven't really asked him that because Dan doesn't talk about himself. So if he had some people he was sitting with, I wouldn't necessarily know it.
Uh-huh.
But I bet not. We
Well,
don't.
please tell him hello. I mean, I haven't seen him in years since
I
he was
will.
at Crestone, you know.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. Yeah. I was a Zen Center company man, I said, for 10 years, 5 with Suzuki and 5 with Baker. And then I started living with a woman. My wife and I broke up. She stayed at the Zen Center, and I was living nearby up in Bolinas with a woman. And people would ask me if I'd stop practicing. And I would hope, But actually, I kept an involvement with Zen Center. I did a lot of stuff for them through the years, various things. And here, where I live now, I sit every morning, but I don't want to be in a group. I could. I mean, I like groups. I like communal living. If it was right, I could do it. But and my wife sits, and we don't even sit together.
You do not, huh?
No. We get up at different times. We have no schedule. We just get up when we get up. I tend to get up earlier, but not always.
Uh-huh.
It
sounds like a pretty good life out there for you, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Nice people. I love the people here. They're very pleasant. We live in the city, but yeah, it's a problem. Oh, it's terrible what they do here. They just, any vacant space is an opportunity to build another building, even if there's other buildings that have been torn down near it. Yeah, and it's got too much trash, and there's all sorts of problems. But we like it. I like the people.
Well, you can't go. You got to go further than that to get away from samsara.
Yeah, and we live by a nice beach.
Yeah. Oh, you do.
Yeah. I can go swimming there any day of the year. It's got a big tide. It's got a big reef, so it's not like big waves coming in and stuff.
That's what. Well, you're lucky there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hotels and restaurants and things there, but it's never too busy. Even now, with the tourists are back, I'll go down there and I'll just see 5 people on the beach or something. That's several hundred yards. But usually there's a little more than that. And there are a lot of local people. Sometimes the local people, they come like toward the end of the day, and if they use it differently, Actually, most people don't swim. Yeah. Very, very few people swim. Local people and tourists, they tend to just go into the water and stand there or sit or something.
I know. Yeah, the same here with beach living. Well, over here, the beaches are compromised because there's shark activity here now. There's a lot of seals that have come south, because of the water's warming up.
Oh.
So the sharks have followed the seals.
Right. Right.
Yeah, a lot of people are. There've been very few attacks, but just enough to have people scared.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Shark attacks are rare, but if there's sharks around, like in California too, can make you a little nervous while you're swimming.
Yeah.
I know of no shark story. I never hear any shark story here. Australia, God, man, in Australia, you hear them.
Yeah, and here too, there have been a few. It just takes a couple.
Yeah.
For to change the whole atmosphere.
Right. Or a movie. I mean,
That's true.
Jaws ruined
Yeah,
going to the beach for millions of people.
that's right. That's right.
uh, yeah. Well, let's see. You know, um, I wanted you to list the books you've written.
Oh, well, I started off the first novel that I talked about was called One on One.
Yeah.
And then I wrote a book on neurosurgery called Brain Surgeon.
Right.
And the book that it grew out of was a novel called Memories of Amnesia.
So that came out later,
Which,
right?
yeah, well, I was working on it before I started the neurosurgery research, but the novel led me to it. And then
you talk about the amnesia, memories of amnesia. That's a great name. You talk about that in Four Men Shaking, and
yeah,
you spent a lot of time. It was very impressive. That would have taken enormous patience with someone who basically didn't communicate with you. Isn't that true?
oh, you mean with doing the Memories of Amnesia?
Yeah. Or was that neurosurgery?
That was a neurosurgeon. The neurosurgery book was called Brain Surgeon. That was nonfiction.
Right.
But that grew out of research that I was doing on the novel Memories of Amnesia.
Do you remember this person? You said nobody wanted to do a study of this person because it was so boring. You talk about him in the book, going there and sitting with him, and he played cards.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that was an amazing person. He was had been a head of the sociology department at Colgate University, and he got encephalitis, so he had a serious brain dysfunction. But all he wanted to do all day was play solitaire. And I tell you who else played solitaire a lot was Norman Mailer.
That's right. And I noticed that because you said Mailer started off the day with an hour of solitaire, and he called it combing his brain.
Right. I play solitaire too.
I do too.
It's a great Zen practice.
Yeah.
But
when I open my computer, the first thing I do is play a game of Spider 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you read the essay that I did on that guy who played solitaire? It's called the Professor.
No, I just read about him in your book, For Men Shaking.
Oh, I'd like to send you that. I'll send you that essay on him.
Yeah, do.
He was an amazing guy, and he was an amazing experience for me just to be in his presence. But I'll send you this. I'll send it to you.
Do. So okay. What do you play? What type of solitaire do you play?
I just play the regular. What do you call it?
Klondike.
Klondike.
Yeah. Do you play with cards?
I play on my computer.
Right. I play on a computer, definitely.
And I think it's a completely purifying thing to do.
That's right.
It's just and that's why this guy who did it was using, he was combing his brain in the same way. Of course, his brain was torturing him.
Well, he had no memory.
He had no memory, but he was completely dysfunctional, and he wasn't comfortable about being his dysfunction.
Oh.
Except when he played solitaire. Yeah, I'd like to. You might be interested in this just who he was. He was an amazing character.
Mm.
And when, like I said, when I was looking for to do research on my novel, they let me talk to him because nobody else wanted to talk to him.
Wow.
He was so boring, just to be in his presence.
Hey, I have a question. Are you talking on a mic?
No.
Because all of a sudden your S's you're S'ing really strong.
No, I've got the phone. I'm just talking on my phone.
But maybe don't put it right in front of your mouth.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you just started. It's S'ing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, you wanted me to take the rest of my books after Memories of Amnesia came out.
Yeah.
Then I did the Ambivalent Zen.
Yeah.
And then I did a book on nose picking called Crust.
Horrors.
Horrors?
I said horrors. And you said your wife what did you say your wife's attitude toward it was?
Yeah, it was almost ended on my marriage. She couldn't stand me even thinking about it, but much less writing about it. She was horrified.
That's the way I am. I go, I don't even want to think about that.
I had a review of that book. It came out in England, and they said that I had written the great American nose picking novel.
Oh my God, that is so. That is so amazing.
Yeah, and that was the book I was working on when I knew Mailer. And Mailer loved it.
Oh my God,
he loved it. He just thought that it should be much longer. It's a fairly short novel, but Mailer thought it could be 700 pages.
My God.
Yeah.
That is something.
It's a great subject.
Yeah. Well,
but anyway.
And then after that?
Well, after that was For Men Shaking.
And you've done a lot of articles. Yeah,
I have done a lot. I worked for the Times magazine for a while, and that was my main. That was the main articles that I did working for them.
Yeah,
I would like. I'm hoping now to get those articles published if I can. I might have to do that independently, But I have a bunch of articles that I would get.
Maybe the Times could help you.
Well, they're not the kind of people that will want to do that, I don't think. But I wish I would. I don't see them doing that for me.
So, goodness. Well, is there anything we haven't touched on here that you wanted to mention?
No, I think not. I think it's just it really. I was given an incredible gift to be able to know those three men in the For Men Shaking.
Yeah,
and I do think it's true that each of them was shaking in their own way, because they were, each of them was a practitioner in their own way, and they were both, they were real. It was just a great privilege to know them. I was incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
So thank you for your interest. Yeah. Thank you for your interest.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. It was really interesting to learn just accidentally learned in this conversation that you had spent some time with Richard Baker and that you'd sat at Crestone and that you knew Dan Welsh and you knew Chris Mello.
Yeah.
And Sophie, you know Sophie, his wife?
No, I didn't meet her, but he talked about her, so I've never met.
Yeah.
I knew Christian.
She's an artist. Yeah. Yeah, he's great. And listen, this place, the Zendo, it used to be a bed and breakfast. I've stayed there. It's right across the street from Naropa. And it's really nice. It's really nice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly like to pay them a visit because see my old editor there, you know, and I know he's there. What's your editor and mine?
Matt Zeppelin.
Shambhala.
Matt Zeppelin. Yeah. And he's a student of Richard Baker's.
I know he is. Well, say hello to him too for me, will you?
Yeah.
You to all of them.
Yeah.
But Baker, I'd love to see those guys again.
Baker and you are pretty close. He might be a year younger than you, but he's doing good. He's doing good.
Is he?
Yeah. He's very impressive. Yeah. And I enjoy relating to him. I enjoy being in his places. I love being in Germany. I've spent time there. Crestone sort of scares me. I don't want to be there in the winter. I don't want to. It gets too icy and fall down. He broke his arm there a couple of years ago.
Oh, he did. Yeah, it could be dangerous, but it's so beautiful there. It's really beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And
it's got to be one of the most beautiful zendos in the world.
Yeah. Wow. And the one in Germany, you know, he really believes in a good infrastructure. And he's done the same thing with his German group and Crestone that he did with Zen Center, is he pushes it beyond what anybody thinks it can go.
Please say hello to Richard for me, will you?
I will. This has been fun. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, it's great to talk to you.
Well, take care.
Take care of yourself. Anyway, be in touch with me if you need me, and let me know when you put this up, will you?
Yeah, I will. Oh, I need a picture of you. I can get it on the online, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's pictures of you on the internet.
I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah.
You got any picture of you younger?
Yeah, but I was never younger.
Well,
can't you tell?
We put. That's funny. We use a photograph relatively recent. You know, sometime in the last 20 years, say.
I'll get you one.
With the podcast. But then on my main website, cuke.com, on the podcast page, which it isn't really the home for the podcast, we have a now and then pictures. You know, like we have the more recent one, and then we'll have one like, you know, from the 70s or 60s.
Oh, I'll get you both.
Yeah.
I'll send them to you.
Oh, good.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, okay?
Thank you.
Take
Fun
care
talking.
of yourself.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Larry. That was great. Yeah, second time around. And I wonder what we lost in the first one. Anyway, that was really, really good. Appreciate it. So, listen, Gooksters and those who've tuned in. One thing I wanted to do now was to acknowledge our sponsor, which is you, because with your support, and the support I get from people who follow Cuke.com, ShunyuSuzuki.com, our posts on the blog, and Cuke Archives, What's New blog, and the Instagram, and people who are aware of the work that's been going on for 30 years and continues to work with Shunryu Suzuki lectures and the oral written history of that whole the phenomena of what happened when Shunryu Suzuki came to America, what was already happening, what has happened as a result, not only of him, but of us. And I don't know, it didn't seem to have any place where it ends, but I try to keep it focused somewhat. Anyway, for that to keep going, I must thank you for your support, which, if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to consider it and go to cuke.com, cuke.com, hit the donate button, and from there you can either send a contribution through PayPal or a check in the mail. And they're tax deductible. It's all explained on that page. So thanks a lot. Take care. And until next time, I'm DC, Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogya Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.